Never find where you are. Won't be 'cause I never see why you're so afraid that you are away from me. You're so afraid that you are away from me.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming back to us. This is Stigma Does Not Define Us. My name is Stacy from Mental Health, and our goal is to bring attention to men's mental health and most especially to feature men who have had therapy, who have sought help, and what that looks like for them, and all the benefits of just asking for help. Today, we have a young man, Antonio Ferreira, who is out there making waves, making changes. He is amazing. I just told him I wish when I was as young as he was, if I had had the guts back then, I'd probably be president now or something like that. Antonio, let's just bring you in. Here we go. We'll switch spots. Here he is. Thank you so much for joining us. You are amazing. Tell us what you're up to these days, which is many things.
I mean, first and foremost, thank you for that introduction. It means a lot. I'm very, very, very grateful for that.
You're very welcome.
But yeah, I mean, for people who don't know, so I'm a mental health activist, a speaker, and also a student. I don't think
Mhm.
that gets a lot or enough credit, actually. I think a lot of people have the tendency to oversee that. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
like you said, being an activist and public speaker and, really engrossed in that space and really passionate about that space, it makes you very busy because, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like something that needs to be done. And so,
Mhm.
you, yeah, that makes us the basis of my busy schedule and my passion.
Yeah. Yeah. You are everywhere. I'm following you on Instagram, and you are using your voice in the most positive way. And I applaud you genuinely. You're doing such a
Thank
great
you.
job. Just so we have some history, I know you and I talked a couple months ago, before we actually got this recording session going. Tell me about your childhood. It was interesting, the way you internalized some comments from your parents. I think they intended them to be compliments, but then you it built pressure on you, and you had a little hard time dealing with that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. You hit the nail on the head there. It's coming from an African background. And especially a big family too. So, I'm the youngest of five brothers.
Wow.
Um, so, you know, there's a lot of, I guess, pressure, maybe not direct
Mhm,
pressure, but indirect pressure for you
mhm,
to be, high achieving, for you to be this match, not actually, macho man would be the wrong words to use, for you to be the model male in the family, right?
mhm.
You're not
Got it.
supposed to have weaknesses or vulnerabilities. You're simply supposed to have your education, have your career, have your family, and that's as straightforward as family goes. As family, so
Mhm,
as life goes.
mhm,
I mean, I'm quite fortunate to say that my parents weren't as strict in that manner, right? But
mhm.
you also then have your outside family. So it's not just about my parents at this point, right? So my
Right.
parents aren't putting this much direct pressure on me. They're not,
Mhm,
strict and adamantly putting it on me. However, I
mhm,
can tell, or I guess
mhm,
I'm putting it on myself that outside of my parents, there's still,
mhm.
wider family who want to see that happen. And, that creates a big pressure. And like as I said, my parents weren't directly applying that pressure. Sometimes they would say things that were meant to be encouragement, but because I had this
Right,
idea or perception that, outside the family, I had to really make our family look good. I had to make myself look good
right.
for my parents, right? And
Mhm, mhm,
people always say you are a reflection of your parents. And so
mhm,
for me, that was something. to be proud of, but something that came to me as, oh my God, I need to be the best of the best of the best of the best. I have to, I have to,
Right.
because if I'm going to reflect my parents, I want my parents to be reflected in the best way possible.
Mhm. Was wondering if you wouldn't mind going into that darkest hour, that real dark place for you, and your brother was there for you. Tell us about that day.
Yeah, so this, was when behaviors was changing, was starting to be noticed, and I was referred to my child adolescent mental health service. I was feeling an immense amount of pressure,
Mhm,
stress, all from the expectations of my parents, my peers, my teachers,
mhm,
and I thought I would be able to manage. I thought I'd be able to get through it, but it just felt like each day was getting more and more, you know, rather than each day getting lighter, it was getting heavier. And I had this boulder on my back that, I don't know, I somehow was growing bigger and
mhm,
putting me closer to the ground until the day where, I decided actually I can't manage no more. I can't cope with this. I'm not seeing any hope or way out of
mhm,
this
mhm,
apart from taking myself out of the world. And
mhm,
so, in having those suicidal thoughts, I came to this day where I decided that I was going to attempt to take my life. And you know, at the moment, at this point where where I was being recognized by Child Adolescent Mental Health Service, I was still not disclosing as much as I should have.
uh,
So I think it's really important in at this stage to recognize that if I was someone who was as open as I am now, probably a lot of things would have been nipped in the bud before they got to this day. But
mhm,
to answer your question, yeah, I remember, I wanted to go into college because I wanted to make everything look normal. I didn't want no one to suspect anything, I didn't want to raise no eyebrows or concerns.
mhm,
And so
mhm,
my plan was to go to college, had the normal day, and as kids do after college, they just stay around for a bit with friends and stuff. And so that was the
mhm,
time, I thought would be perfect because everything would just look normal and no one would raise questions. However, before actually getting into college, I called my child adolescent mental health service and I said, and I let them know that I had this plan. I didn't let them know in detail and I didn't let them know who I was. But they did attempt to try to find out, like, they asked for my name. I said, no, I don't want to tell you. They tried to ask for my address. I said, no, I don't want to tell you. Then they asked for my birthday, and actually, I gave them my birthday, thinking,
mhm.
there's going to be so many other people in this service with my birthday. There's absolutely no way I'm the only person, right?
Right.
Somehow, I was the only person with that birthday, and so they sent someone into my college to bring me into the building, and that was my brother. And so my brother collected me from college. We went into the child adolescent mental health service building. And I remember at the time, I was sitting in a room with my psychiatrist, my psychologist, and my brother to the right of me. And at this point, I was experiencing auditory hallucinations, right? Because when my psychiatrist was asking me, what's going on? What's happened? We've had this call. Is everything okay? I can
Mhm,
vaguely remember hearing her voice. I more remember hearing the voices I was hearing telling me, you need to do it now. Now is the only opportunity you'll get, or you'll have to live with this
mhm,
forever, and so forth. And even in responding, I wasn't responding to my psychiatrist's questions of what's going on, what's happened. I was telling her, I was repeating what the voices were saying to me. So I was saying, you've ruined everything. I've got to do it now. This is not how I'm supposed to go. This is my only opportunity, to the
right.
point where I reached into my bag for what I was going to use to complete suicide, and my brother spotted it, and as soon as he spotted it, he tackled me to the ground, like
Mhm,
he
mhm.
jumped on me, right? If this was rugby, it'd be the perfect tackle, um, and he was, holding on to me on the ground and saying, "Oh, if you're gonna hurt yourself, you're gonna have to hurt me first." And in that moment,
Mm,
you know that you had no plans to hurt anyone else. You only had
right.
plans to hurt yourself, and so incurring pain and damage on someone else was never part of the plan. And so that was enough for me to let go and listen to him and everyone else
Mhm,
that followed. And that was that moment that led the biggest crisis I had. That led to me being in hospital, and I guess also taught me a lot.
mhm. Yeah. Well, it also, you got a firsthand, witness to how much your brother loves you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that alone, how far he's going to go. And I think sometimes we need to tell each other more how much we love
Mm.
each other. I know that's true in any family. So from there, I'm assuming you got into therapy, and you said, were you hospitalized at that point? What was the benefit? What did you like? What did you not like about those next steps?
Yeah, I think so. At the time, I absolutely didn't like anything because obviously,
Mhm,
you're in distress. You can't really see the benefit in any of what's going on or what's coming to
mhm,
you. But I had spent time as a inpatient in the mental health ward,
mhm,
um, and that time I spent gave me space to evaluate everything that had happened, is happening, and is going to happen. I
mhm,
got the opportunity to look at you know what went well, and as you said, and what could have been even better if, right? And there were things, for example, at that point where my brother had tackled me, the police and ambulance showed up, but the police came in and treated the matter first, and they treated the matter first like a crime before they treat it as a mental health issue.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, that definitely could have been something that would have been improved, right?
Mhm,
But
mhm,
then I always learned that there's always two sides to a story. And actually, the officer who, and this is a fine example, the officer who showed up to the scene, he said to me, I can see what's going on here. I know what is happening. And I've spoken to a psychiatrist. However, the sergeant or whoever above him was telling him on the radio, he's in a room with a weapon. He needs to be
mm,
arrested. And unfortunately, he said, look, the best I can do is I won't put handcuffs on you. Let's just go and everything will be sorted out. And that's
right,
again, in evaluating that showed me there's always two sides to a story, right?
right,
And what
right,
you don't see, you can't. I guess you can't tell, right? What you don't
right.
know, you can't say. And in that, I just learned to humble my reactions. It's not
Mhm,
straight away, oh, police are this, police are that. It's actually how much understanding do they have? How much of the situation are they aware of, right? And
mhm,
that goes
right,
beyond police as well, just in general. And that's why I say
right.
there's always two sides to a story because the person who was there seeing what was going on wanted to help. However, he was overpowered by someone who couldn't see the
Sure,
situation, who only heard
sure.
what was in the situation.
Right.
And yeah, and benefits again being in that mental health ward, I was someone who was originally very ignorant to
Mhm,
mental health and that whole system, right? But being
mhm,
in there, talking to other patients, and this is the best thing I always tell people in anything that I say about my story is I learned that when people say you can't pour out of an empty cup, that cup
mhm,
isn't always
mhm.
empty. Sometimes we're just oblivious to what's being poured out of that cup because
Okay. Mhm,
the other
mhm.
patients are really the ones who's promoted my recovery. They really encouraged it. And I remember when I left, they all said to me, Antonio, we don't want to see you back here again. You've got a lot for you. You need to,
Yeah.
you know, pursue that. And these are patients who have been there before me and are still there after me. So, they'd have really traumatic experiences,
Mhm,
worse than
mhm,
mine, right?
mhm,
And that's not to compare, but that's to say, this is what this is what I gained from being around people in a similar situation. I gained an understanding, I gained an awareness, and I learned that, I really shouldn't have any blame or shame to my experience
mhm.
or what had happened.
Right. Well, gaining perspective, I think that's personal growth right there. You know what I'm saying? Back to the police officer, back to the other patients. It's a funny balance between realizing sometimes people have it worse, but not invalidating where you are as well. You know what I'm saying? You have
Mm,
your struggle, and they have theirs, but everybody's worst is their worst, and for you, that was your worst. And you have to acknowledge and validate those things, and not do too much comparing
right.
to other people, because you don't want to minimize where you are. And I think sometimes we do that. Now, I do hear a lot, therapists. There are people out there who's like, "Oh, I've tried therapy,"
Mhm.
and then people who have really committed to therapy sometimes say it takes the second, the third, the fourth therapist before they find someone who really clicked. Was that true for you? Did it take a few therapists to find somebody you clicked with?
Actually, yeah. In it, well, actually, I don't actually think it's the therapist, to be honest. I had therapy since the first time I went into child adolescent mental health service up until 3 years after being discharged, or 4 years after 3 years, 4 years after being discharged from the mental health ward. And so I,
Mhm,
gained perspectives from various therapists because not all not throughout the therapy, not it wasn't all the same one therapist, right?
mhm, mhm,
And so I gained various perspectives. I would say that it isn't about, obviously you have better experiences with some therapists, but you still gain a lot from the ones that you don't have as good experience with, right? Because you
gotcha.
gain a
Mhm,
perspective. That's the main thing. You gain a perspective, right?
mhm,
It's not to be some sort of magic wand or miracle. It's
mhm,
gaining people's perspective. And I think in the fact that I learned so many perspectives, it again taught me, there's always two sides to a story. There's always a different understanding to yours, to a story or event or feeling or thought, right? Or
mhm,
emotion.
mhm,
And yeah, again, definitely there were some that we clicked better, but that simply came under the hood of, language. Our language was similar, or our growing up was similar. Certain
mhm,
things that you could
gotcha.
attribute to together, but even from
Mhm,
those, I didn't have that. It taught me a different perspective. So I didn't want to
mhm,
just be in the circle of what I knew already or what I was
mhm,
familiar
mhm,
with. I also wanted to know what I was unfamiliar with and learn new things, right? That's what life and progress and development and growth is all about, learning new things from things you don't know already or for people you don't know already. And so, I again wouldn't say it takes one, two, three. What I was gonna
mhm,
say is it takes how you engage with those therapists. Because I remember the first therapy I had with the first therapist I had, I wasn't as engaging. I was just there. I was, again, as I said, I was quite ignorant, so I didn't see myself in a need for therapy. So I wasn't as
got it.
engaging, right?
Mhm.
And I think throughout all my journey, that's the main thing I've learned. Your output really matches your input. So if you really want something, make sure you're giving as much to get out of it.
You number one, you were way beyond your years. Do you know how old people are before they figure that out? You were way beyond your years. I think that's amazing.
Thank you.
People, they just want this warm, fuzzy vibe from the beginning. And I can't say I was in my late 30s, 40s before I looked at every situation, even the uncomfortable ones, to say, okay, what am I learning here? I'm not crazy
Mhm.
about this, but there's something to learn in every situation. And to have that perspective as a very young person will serve you well your whole life. So
Thank you.
I would love to have everyone who's listening listen to that. Even if you are with a therapist, you're not crazy about, they still have something to offer and something for you to
Mhm.
learn.
Mhm.
Um, wow, that's fantastic. I wanted to move on to a question we discussed when we were on our last meeting. You are out there bringing amazing amounts of attention to men's mental health in general, but also Black men's mental health.
Mm.
And I wanted to give you an opportunity here to let us know, tell us, what is the extra things that we need to know, that we need to consider between just general men's mental health and Black men's mental health?
Yes, that's a good question. I think the thing to remember is simply what you've just said in that sentence. There's men's mental health and there's black men's mental health,
Mhm,
which then means there's actually two types of stigmas and stereotypes
mhm,
and barriers
mhm,
and misconception, right? As a male, you already have that barrier or stigma and misconception. As a
mhm,
black male, you have the black and the male together, and so you're, and again, not in comparison, but you are consequently dealing with twice as much because
mhm,
you need to overcome being a black person first of all. And you need to overcome being a male, and now you need to overcome being a black male. And in my situation, or for many other situations, is you need to overcome being black, male, young, and with a mental health diagnosis.
wow.
So
Mhm,
the
mhm,
pressure is really on, right? The pressure is really on, and for most, it's easier to just not be known for the diagnosis, so I won't, call it out. I won't speak of it. I won't mention it, and I won't seek support because it's bad enough being a black male. I don't even want
mhm,
to have that fight of
Mhm.
also being diagnosed with mental illness.
Mhm.
And then, you know, being a black person, that one is one that's been in society for a very long time, right? And
Mhm.
even in that, like sometimes I feel we settle for
Mhm.
those misconceptions or what you may call it.
Mhm.
And if there isn't someone to speak up about it, or
Mhm.
put their foot forward about it, and this comes from the likes of even black leaders in the past. We're talking like
Mhm.
Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. These are all people in that you know different definition of black, but they didn't settle for just
Mhm.
being black. They said,
Right.
actually, I want better, or we deserve
Mhm.
better, or we should actually just be equal. I think
Mhm.
as a black person,
Mhm.
see in my community, it's not that we want to be equal. We want to be here. When really
Mhm.
we're here, but we should just be reaching here. We should be equal, but we're trying
Mhm.
to reach higher than the rest, and which creates an imbalance because that then, creates over resilience, and it
Mhm.
creates this idea of I'm the strongest person, I'm the strongest male, I'm the strongest type of male, and that's it. So there
Right.
will be no schizophrenia, there will be no borderline personality disorder.
Mhm.
I am a young black man, Antonio, and that is all you know me as. That's all you refer to me as. And
Mhm.
then, just the male part of it. We are all very familiar with that because there's a lot of talk on that. And it's, well, what's the model male we should be? We don't cry. We don't show
Mhm.
vulnerabilities. We don't show emotions. We deal
Mhm.
with things, again, with these very derogative terms, as a man should.
Mhm.
Men don't
Right.
cry. You know,
Right.
you need to man up. You need
Yeah.
to toughen up. All these things, and I'm very big on language,
Yeah.
very big on communication, and so
Mhm.
I'm very aware of what words can imply and what people can take from words as well, right?
Mhm.
The other day, I was asked, what would be your preferred language? And I said, my preferred language would actually be abbreviations. And I said abbreviations because abbreviations come at your own free will of perspective. There is
Mhm.
no one that's going to, so for example, if I wanted to abbreviate the word black, if I wanted to abbreviate the word BOK, that I know what BOK means to me, right? There
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
no society terminology that comes with it. BOK to me is what I chose to abbreviate the word black into. So
Gotcha. Mhm.
I'd prefer to use abbreviations, although it probably make conversations very lot more complicated. It's the idea of free will to perceive how you want it to be, or how you intend it to be, or how you want to customize or personalize it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, and I do remember do you feel, if I'm recalling right, I felt like you said something, you feel like there's more room, or it's slightly more acceptable for a white man to say, I'm not feeling great, or something's wrong, or I'm gonna reach out for help, and you feel that Black men have less room to say that because they have to be strong. That strength is expected to be there at all costs, and would you say that that's true? So they're less likely to ask because of that?
Yeah, definitely. And I also think because, there's a lot more role models in white males showing vulnerability.
Mhm,
As a black male, we don't have that many role models, so it's not a thing for us to even consider. So that's, I
mhm,
guess, also an attribute to why it's easier. And I think it's not just I'm struggling, it's things like, as you said, I'm struggling, I need help, and even things like saying the words I love you, and
mhm.
these kind of things that hold so much gender stereotype, I guess.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned, the way to change that is by leading by example, and that's why I believe for white male it's easier to say, because I think people see it often happen from or
Mhm,
come from a white male rather than they
mhm.
see it from a black male.
Right. Right. Understood. Invalid, and that was something I learned from you, things that you don't even think about, and we all have to be, humble enough to learn from each other, and I do appreciate you sharing that. Um, so I wanted to move over to a post that I saw. It was a red background, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about tokenism and what your observations are there.
Hmm.
And your post said you were talking directly into the screen and you said, I'm no longer going to be available. I'm going to let you take it from there. That post was very moving. And I wanted to give you a moment to sort of reiterate those thoughts from that post.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, as someone who has had a vast experience in volunteering for charities, for various charities, right?
Mm-hmm.
The common volunteers once, twice, and probably won't for a while again. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it's been consistently volunteering, and not just for one charity, for seven, eight, nine other organizations. And I'm just, really tired of being used in a way that isn't, valid to me, but valid to the appearance of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
almost as if, right, you have, you go to a section of pens, and you go into shopping, there's a section of pens, sorry, and a customer comes in and says, well, actually, why don't you have, pencils? And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
actually, you know what? That's a good idea. But they only put the pencils on the posters and they don't have the pencils in store. That's as really what it feels like, right?
Wow.
You're
Mm.
you're portraying me as part of your organization, to show for being truly fair and equal. But as
Mhm,
someone who's really like someone who's internal of the
mhm,
organization, I
mhm.
don't feel like I'm being seen in your shop. I don't feel like I'm actually being seen in your organization. I don't feel like I'm actually being prized or valued. And I just got
Wow.
really tired of that because, I learned, or I was hardwired, should I say, to believe that you don't express your frustrations towards charities, organizations. You just take the opportunity and make the most of it and move.
Mhm, mhm,
But then it
mhm,
came to me that actually withholding my emotions and my feelings and my thoughts is exactly what I was doing with my mental illness at the beginning. And
hmm.
so if I could, overcome that and take the biggest leap a man, a young black man could do to,
Mhm,
start opening up and be honest about it, well, I'm going to do the same about my experience with charities. And
mhm,
I, again, I have been told, or actually, I believe, actually, I'll be confident enough to say, I believe I'm doing it in a very humble and respectful way, right? Because again, it
mhm,
comes back to this, there's always two sides to the story. And so in telling, senior leaders of charities, you need to do a lot more. Because
mhm.
I'm someone who's been heavily involved, I still don't feel you're doing what you're saying you're doing. You're not doing half of what you're saying you're doing, or at least it doesn't
Mhm.
feel like that,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And I think, as I said, there's two sides to the story. I don't always think that it's being done intentionally. There
Mhm,
are things to understand on this road.
mhm,
One, tokenism isn't always intentional.
mhm,
When you're someone that's useful, you're going to be requested a lot. Simply put,
mhm,
when you're
mhm.
useful, people will require you'll want to use you, right?
Right. Right.
Secondly, if you are not from an underrepresented community, you won't see the actions that you're doing as actually we're not being fair and equal here. Actually, it's very easy to switch off from it and become oblivious to it, not intentionally, but
Mhm.
simply you can't get into my shoes without first taking off your shoes,
I
or
like that.
you can't wear my glasses without first taking off your glasses because actually our prescriptions are different. So you put on my glasses, you'll barely see what I'm seeing and how I see it, right?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that is the point of collaborating with people from underrepresented communities, but from a
Mhm.
very senior level, because when we do it at a lower level, we get filtered out. But when we do it from the top down, it's more like
Yeah.
we're spreading it, right? We are
Yeah.
spreading it. And
Mhm.
that's what that was about. And that's where I guess my exhaustion, my
Yeah.
somewhat frustration as well
Mhm,
came from as well, but it was in the most humble and respectful way, offering that lending hand of support from a genuine angle to,
mhm,
do better because my whole experience wasn't terrible. If it was terrible, I wouldn't have been this
mhm.
involved. But it's
Right.
me,
Right.
exactly. But it's me saying, let me help you to be better because you're saying you want to be, anti-racist organization. I never put
Mm,
those words into your mouth. You said it. So let
right.
me help you make those words into action rather than
Hmm.
just buzzwords.
Hmm. Yep. I think you did it very well. You have a manner of communicating that is very friendly, engaging, and not off-putting, and you don't scare people away, even if you have maybe a difficult point to make. And I think you open up the discussion that desperately has to be had when you approach the discussion with that tone, I should say. And I just, I'm always watching you and listening to you, and I'm just like, you got more than you realize. I think sometimes
Thank
you
you.
just you have, like I said, you're going to do a lot of good things. So how, since you've made that point, since you're reaching out from the top down,
Mhm.
what's been the response, and what would you see? What would have to happen? What would you have to see to, in your mind, behind your glass, to say, okay, they're doing it right? What does that look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, initially the response has been great. I've actually received responses from a lot more CEOs than I'd expected, met with a lot more CEOs than
Mhm,
I expected, and engaged with a lot more. And every day, it's part of why we've been so busy. Every day has been a contributing factor towards that petition and campaign, meeting with different senior leaders, planning, and just analyzing, okay, what do we need to do? How do we do it? How do we make it genuine? And
mhm,
that comes on to the second part of your question. I think for me, how it looks is simply, when we're taking insight, knowledge, wealthy knowledge from people from underrepresented communities, we're valuing their time.
mhm,
We're not abusing the word volunteer and doing and taking consultancy work from them. We are
mhm,
valuing their time, valuing their insights as fairly and as equally as possible. Because
mhm,
if you
mhm,
took away volunteer from that and you replace it with consultant, listen, it'd be a completely different ballgame. But because this and your organization is a volunteer, it's easy to exploit that
mhm.
consultancy work as
I see.
as right. Yeah, and that would be
Mhm,
the first. And then the second thing is diversifying the senior leadership team of organizations, because
mhm,
comes back to that point, right? If you want to do better, you first have to come out of your own shoes and come into our shoes, or take off your glasses and wear my glasses. And you can't do that if all your glasses are silver. If all
yeah.
your frameworks are silver, how are you going to understand a framework
Mhm,
that's brown? Or how are you
mhm,
going to understand a
mhm,
framework that's green? You need to have that diversity in your senior leadership team.
mhm,
Those
mhm,
two things, and also someone needs to hold these leaders accountable, because I think it's very easy to,
mhm,
have noise as loud as it is for 2, 3, 4 weeks. But I reckon after that, things will start to die down. We'll go back into our own habits, because habits are
right.
habits. Let's remember that
Mhm,
habits are
mhm,
habits, and it's not as
mhm,
easy to break a habit. So we need accountability to make sure, what you said, what you put forward is what you're doing, and constantly doing it. It's
mhm,
what you're working and striving towards. Um, and yeah, I wanted to come back to that point of diversity, to clarify what diversity is to me, because I think when we think of diversity, we then get into that again, another habit of, okay, here's one, two, Asian or black people, we're diverse.
mhm,
That's not diverse. That's not diverse. That
mhm,
is again tokenistic, because you're trying
mhm.
to keep up an appearance which isn't
Yeah,
genuine.
right, right.
Diversity to me, it looks
Mhm.
like a fruit salad. This is the best example I've ever given.
I like
It's a
that.
fruit salad. Exactly.
Mhm,
Because a fruit salad isn't made up of just apples, isn't made up of just pears, isn't made up of
mhm,
just oranges. It's all of them together in one space in equal proportions.
mhm,
That is what
mhm,
diversity looks like to me. It's a fruit salad. And that's what I would love to see, or will be for me,
mhm.
the accomplishment of, you know, all of this.
Right, right. Yeah, beautifully said. That's fantastic. And I agree. You're not there just to check a box. So I'd be surprised if you're not going to be asked to be on some senior leadership soon. If that hasn't happened already, I think I'm a little surprised. But I would think that's right around the corner for you.
I
Your
hope so
perspective
too.
is. Your perspective is fabulous. So, what can we be doing? What can Stigma Does Not Define Us and Mentel be doing? We're just getting started. We're small. We don't right now. Our major service is the podcast and the stories. But
Mhm.
if there's something we can do, what would it be to make sure that we're helping you in your cause?
I mean, from from this perspective, what we're doing right here, right now, having this conversation
Hmm.
about having this conversation um with with outside of this podcast, right? Having this conversation with whether it be senior leaders or whatever else, but
Hmm.
from with white counterparts, the
Hmm.
conversation is very awkward because it's we have that fragility of we're very walking on eggshells on what we say and how we're going to be seen and how
Hmm.
something's going to be
Hmm.
taken. But the
Hmm.
more you have the more there is conversation being shown, like between you and I, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Someone who's a black male and someone who's a white female, and
Hmm.
just expanding that knowledge between us two, that is creating allies. Sorry, we're
Hmm.
creating allyship, right? And I
Hmm.
don't ever want to promote a scenario where we get to this stage and we're all just black or we're
Hmm.
all just
Hmm.
Asian. I
Hmm.
very much believe in collaboration, and
Hmm.
my rule is two is always better than one, but it's also let's teach each other, you know?
Hmm.
That comes to all
Hmm.
the points I've been making. So I think having these conversations, promoting these conversations, illustrating these conversations between, a mixed backgrounds together
Hmm.
at each
Hmm.
other, whatever it may be, is amazing. I think first and foremost, that is amazing. That is what needs to be done because
Hmm.
I guarantee there's probably a lot of people who will feel afraid to reach out to someone of color because of how awkward they'll feel in that conversation. But
Yeah.
that makes no
Yeah.
progress. We don't grow in our comfort zones.
Right.
And so,
Y-
yes,
Yeah.
and so, so I think that is one of the main things we need to do. And then
Mhm.
I guess, I don't know, just hold on to that goal.
Yeah.
Stigma does not define us.
Hmm.
Hold on to
Hmm.
that goal because I think what's happened for a lot of people or whoever it may be, and this is in no direct to anyone, it's just in general life, you get
Hmm.
complacent and you lose track of what your original goal was. You lose track of what your original aim was, and you
Yeah.
start to do other things, and you
Fair.
start to lose your passion for ego. You
Hmm.
start to lose your commitment to
Hmm.
reputation. And I think
Hmm.
these are things to definitely be aware of and avoid.
Yeah. No, that's fabulous as well. I appreciate you saying that. I have my perspective, and I think you're right. People are afraid because nobody wants to offend the other. Um, but there's no way to learn, and there's no way to understand someone else's perspective unless you ask the question. And I think sometimes the questions in and of themselves seem insulting, or why doesn't
Mm,
that person get that? You know what I mean? But I know talking to you has always been very easy, and I encourage more black and white people to talk and allow that space for even the awkward questions, even the questions that to the black person may come across as insulting, but perhaps know that that's not the intent of the question. The intent of the question is to learn that perspective, or I don't understand this, or I don't understand that. Um, I'm just
right.
glad we got on to that because that I think that's the hesitation because
Mm.
you just don't want to insult somebody. But I think we have to allow for the awkwardness to learn.
Yeah.
I'm
And
assuming you agree. Mm.
yeah, 100%. And I think
Mhm.
I always, well, people know this, and I hope people know this actually, but we learn by our mistakes, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
for you to learn something, it first has to be taught. Who's the best teacher in the life that we live? Our mistakes. And so
Mhm.
we shouldn't be afraid to make those mistakes. We should
Right.
feel willing to accept
Mhm.
the mistake and learn from it. That's how we,
Right.
move forward.
Right. Right. So to close, I do like to ask some fun questions. Do you have favorite movie or favorite movie character that's always inspired you or always made you go, you know what, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through another day. Do you have a favorite movie or something like
I
that?
actually do actually for that description. Yeah, I do. And for me, so the favorite movie is The Pursuit of Happiness. You know, the one that's
Okay.
yeah, the one that's got Will Smith and Jaden Smith.
Yes. So
That
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely love that film, especially for motivation as well. And there's one scene that really sticks in my head. You know, I can't ever let go of that scene. Actually, I think next time I give a talk and a presentation, I'm gonna put that in my talk. The
Yeah.
scene, um, and it is when Jaden Smith. I can't remember the character's name, but when Jaden Smith is you know, is playing basketball with his dad, Will Smith,
Hmm.
and he mentions to his dad, you know, that he wants to be this. So I can't remember off the top of my head, but he mentioned that
Hmm.
he wants to be this something, you know, something extravagant or something that I
Hmm.
guess his dad isn't used to hearing, right?
Yeah.
And his dad, at first instance, shuts him down, and you can see Jaden is just like, whoa, like,
Hmm.
what, you
Yeah.
know, he's disheartened by the fact that his dad's shutting him down, and then his dad, Will Smith, notices and he goes, actually, do you know what? Don't ever let someone tell you
Yes.
you can't do what you want to do. You know, if you want to do something, you want to be
Hmm.
something, you go out there and do it. You know, people who can't do it will tell you you can't do it. Don't
Hmm.
listen to them. You know, you go and do.
Hmm.
I probably
Hmm.
remix that into my own words, but
Yeah.
that is that scene. Yeah,
You just warmed my heart because that's my favorite scene. And
yeah,
what he says, don't ever let anyone talk you out of it. And then he says, not even me. I was
yeah,
like, that is the line that flattens me whenever I see
yeah,
that. That's a fantastic movie. So
definitely.
great pick. Do you
Mm.
have a favorite book or an author that inspires you? Do you have a series of books, anything like that?
Actually, for books, not really, because I don't
No?
read as much as I should probably.
Right. Not
Yeah,
everybody's I'm not I'll read, but I don't I like to listen more than sit there and read. So I get
yeah.
that. I get that.
I'm more of a quotes person, so I know I read up a lot of quotes.
Mhm.
Yeah, but no, for me, or for a book, no.
No. Okay, that's okay. That's no problem. All right. Well, my friend, you have been fantastic. You just
Thank
keep
you,
doing you. You're gonna do amazing. You are doing amazing out there.
thank you,
We would love to have you back. If there's ever any special event you want us to be promoting, we're happy to do that. And I'm just inspired by you, and I do appreciate you letting us have that conversation so that we can learn from each other. I think that's so important, and you do it so kindly and very sweetly, and I appreciate that. So,
thank
all
you
right, my
very,
friend, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're gonna let you go, and yeah, have a good rest of your day.
and
Thanks so
you
much.
take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.